I spent the last half hour regurgitating.
Thank God, because I thought you were singing.
Over the past 3 decades, television has featured popular shows about people from just about every social class and lifestyle. We recognize some of these class differences when we see them. But what actually determines social class? How do we differentiate among the social classes? Sociologists examine social class in different ways. One way is to divide it into 6 categories: upper class, upper middle class, lower middle class, working class, the working poor, and the underclass. There are numerous criteria used to differentiate these classes, but 2 of the most important are education and occupation. A very small percentage of the population belongs to the upper class. Typically, members of the upper class possess great wealth and power.
We're talking about a tiny proportion of the American population, and their positions are often inherited, so they're not necessarily defined in terms of their level of education. They're much more defined in terms of inherited wealth. Family name and background are important criteria for the upper class.
Members of the upper class frequently send their children to the most expensive private schools and universities.
The upper class would attend colleges like Harvard, Yale, Oxford in England. Princeton would be another college that they would attend as well. The children of the upper class would also attend private schools.
A degree from an exclusive university typically prepares young upper-class men and women for a prestigious occupation.
People in the upper class are usually at the top of major corporations. They may be at the top of political hierarchies. They may be the highest-ranking professions.
Of all the classes, the one most shaped by education is the upper middle class.
The standard now is at least a college education, and usually something beyond college for the upper middle class. But that doesn't guarantee that you'll stay in the upper middle class. There are a good number of people who obtain higher educational degrees but aren't able to convert them into a upper middle class position.
Well, the upper middle class typically will have a college degree or a graduate degree. And this is very important because through the degrees they get access to occupations that are knowledge and expertise based.
The occupations which the upper middle class fill will be, on the one hand, the higher level professions like the engineers, doctors, and lawyers. They will be the higher ranks in the government bureaucracy.
A much larger portion of the population belongs to the lower middle class. Members of this social class usually have a comfortable lifestyle and look for ways to increase their opportunities.
The lower middle class will have not more than a college education, sometimes less.
The members of the lower middle class tend to attend colleges and universities in their particular area, community colleges as well. The occupations held by the lower middle class tend to be social workers, nurses, teachers.
Lower levels of government hierarchies, office jobs.
The working class is undergoing rapid and difficult changes as production technologies change. These changes present serious challenges for the working class because of the limited education of its members.
Working class usually do not have more than a high school education, often less.
Some of the working class would attend community colleges. Those in the working class may be trying to acquire some kind of technical certificates.
Working class occupations are, of course, classical factory jobs, jobs in transportation, truck driving, manual labor occupations, lower level service occupations. Store clerks are examples of working class occupations.
A carpenter would be considered part of the working class.
In addition to earning less in most cases, the working class also has less job security than the lower middle class.
The jobs for those people who are considered lower middle class tend to be more secure than the jobs for those people who are in the working class. When we look at those in the working class, there are some jobs that are secure, but many of the jobs, for example, truck drivers who are independent operators, may not have any of those benefits. And so their job would depend on the will of the boss, so there's less security.
Some individuals have a hard time making a living even when working full-time. These individuals are members of the social class called the working poor.
The working poor have less than a high school education, and their educational handicaps are often a major factor in their ability, in their difficulty in rising to a solid working class position.
Being a working poor has less to do with level of education than with the inability to secure a job that gives living wages. And given the minimum wage in this country, there's a lot of people who are working poor.
The working poor often consist of in part, women who are single, who have families to support. And so it's not only the case that they're there because of their low education. They can have pretty good education, but a great deal of responsibility.
The working poor find jobs in such occupations as domestic workers, hotel workers, gardeners, those kinds of sort of unstable jobs with very little security. They're also paid a wage as compared to a salary.
The working poor often include people who work part-time and people who do seasonal job, but it also includes an awful lot of people who work 40 hours a week and don't make living wages.
The social class referred to as the underclass is composed of individuals who have little or no connection with the job market. Life is hard in this class, and despair is a constant.
The underclass people are people who do not have regular employment, are not able to sustain a life through regular employment, usually have extreme educational handicaps, consist of people who are mentally ill, who have been put out in the streets by the deinstitutionalization of society.
They generally tend to be high school dropouts or have acquired only a high school diploma, but the other factor that may set them off is that they may have some sort of work history that makes them ineligible for secure employment. They also may have engaged in some sort of criminal activity, which means they're unemployable by mainstream employers.
It includes some people who have some behavioral problems, such as drugs and alcohol. It also includes a lot of people who do not have access to good childcare and therefore are not able to keep on a job and take care of their children at the same time.
They survive in a very marginal way. They often don't have homes. Their diets are very poor. We know that many people in the underclass eat dog food rather than human food. They stave off starvation, but they don't have a great deal more. It's a very difficult existence, and the temptation to engage in criminality is very much higher if one doesn't have a regular occupation.
There's a strong tendency to blame the underclass for their situation, but in fact, one of the things that differentiates the United States from other advanced industrial society is its inability to provide a lot of resources that would help the working poor or the underclass become part of the working class.
In a country that strives for equality, there are still significant differences between America's social classes. These differences affect virtually every aspect of an individual's life.